All right, we are live. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday, June 3rd edition of the MMA OB Daily Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Adam Martin, joined on Thursdays by Mr. AJ Shula over there. What's going on, AJ? How you doing, man?
Good. Took a week off, but it wasn't without reason. We had no UFC, no Bellator, so it was good to know, just get back, rejuvenate, just take a little bit of a break. Too much, they say too much of anything isn't good. So, but yeah, we're right back at it. We got the Ultimate Fighter back, so exciting times.
For sure. We'll talk about that in a sec. I just want to know, like, for a guy like you who's obviously like on the pulse like me and you're every week in and out, you're betting on the fights, you're looking at the fights. What did you do with your week off?
To be honest, I just kind of explored some other things. I became more passionate about NBA Top Shot. I looked into that. I think it's a really cool concept. So I got some stake in there, as well as crypto. And of course, I couldn't help but resist, but get a little bit of a head start on the Bellator and UFC cards that we have ahead. I'm curious to hear what you did as well on our week off here.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, man, obviously I work full time in the business, right? So I still was writing about it last week, like the news and stuff, but I didn't have to do the handicapping, right? So I was like, you know what, maybe I'll go ahead, but I just honestly took a few days off just to chill with the fiance, just to relax, play some video games. Like you said, AJ, sometimes you got to take a mental break. And honestly, the last couple cards, I thought I was doing, a good job picking the fights, but I ended up, basically 500 the last couple cards. So it was nice to get a week off. Hopefully a fresh set of eyes on these fights this week will do us both some good, AJ. Now, we'll talk a little bit about the UFC card, but I want to talk to you about TUF first, because I know you messaged me the other day. You're like, hey, can we talk about TUF? And I said, sure, if I could get a chance to watch it. And thankfully, they actually showed it up here in Canada. It was on TV, so I did watch it. And I want to get your thoughts on it, AJ, because me and Marcel previewed it last week, and we previewed some of the fighters. And of course, the first guy I said, Aaron Phillips. I'm like, this guy fights in the Alaska regional scene, man. Like, he's going to lose. He gets smoked in his fight against Andrei Petrovsky, who's looks like a good prospect. We'll talk about the fight first, then we'll talk about like the coaches and some of the other talent. But what do you think of this guy Petrovsky, man? I mean, he looks pretty good to me, AJ, and he's not like super experienced by any means. He's fought in like Art of War, which is like an okay promotion in Pennsylvania, and then he did fight Aaron Jeffrey in LFA. That was his like highest rated opponent to date. Lost that fight, but I thought he looked pretty good, man. What's your thoughts on this guy?
So Petrovsky, in full transparency, I didn't watch any of his pre-Ultimate Fighter footage, but from what we saw there, he looks like a very physical guy. You can tell by looking at the guy, but I really like these guys that are wrestler grapplers. I just think it's a very dominant style. I'm happy that he got the win, and I'm happy that he's on Team Ortega. Well, first off, let me just say I think Volkanovski and Ortega are going to make excellent coaches. Those guys are like just laser focused. They have their head on straight, and they seem like they're very easy to work with. But I was really happy that he got the win, but my hesitancy, something that I hope that Petrovsky improves going forward, is I would like to see him a little bit more urgent to get the takedown. We waited until about the 3-minute mark, 3 minutes into the round, rather, for him to actually shoot the takedown, and we saw how easy it was for him to actually get them out and get the choke once he did so. I would like to see him have a little bit more urgency to close that distance going forward and just throw more strikes. Both of them, it was just very weird, just so low output. Yeah. But then Petrovsky, once he got the fight to the ground, he dominated. So I like what I saw out of him. It sounds like you do too, but there are some things that I think could improve, and I think he could get there because, like you said, he's only a few fights. He's only going to get better. Arrow's pointing up with Ortega as his coach, so I'm excited.
Yeah, I agree. The thing for me is, like, I thought he looked good, but again, I just think the opponent was very weak. This guy Phillips, 5-2 record in the regional scene in Alaska. I mean, AJ, that's just not good. You have 2 losses. Well, one guy, Al Mataveo, was on TUF. He lost to Tafon Nchukwu, excuse me, and the other guy was Colin Huckbuddy. He was in the UFC, so I mean, it's not like I think he's in the UFC, Colin Huckbuddy, or he signed. I think he got signed and then he didn't end up joining them. But either way, he's a good prospect too. So it's not like he lost to bums by any means. But I just fade anyone coming out of that promotion, AJ. It's just been a really profitable thing to fade these guys, like that Victor Rodriguez guy last week. The only guy that's good from Alaska, it seems like, is that Uros Medic guy. I don't think you want to fade that dude. He seems like a legitimate killer, and he's quite good at finishing fights quickly, although the fact he only finishes in the first round doesn't worry me when he gets these 15-minute fights. Anyways, I want to talk to you about the coaches for a sec. So I think I'm with you as far as, like, teaching, the technique, their mentorship. I think they'll do a good job. But as far as, like, the entertainment value of the season goes, it sure seemed like it was lacking, man. I got to be honest. Like, there was, like, really no focus on the beef between those two guys. Doesn't seem like they necessarily like each other, but there wasn't, like, a beef, AJ. Whereas some of these coaches in the past, you've seen, like, them really hate each other. And that's why people tune in, because they want to see them, yell at each other and do something crazy. So I'm not sure you, but I didn't really see that heat. Did you see anything or no?
I didn't see it. For me, I mean, I always think back to my first ever tough season that I watched was Rampage and Rashad Evans, and that the beef between those two was just like some of the best. And so, just I think on a season to season basis, we won't see some beef so high. These guys just seem like pretty cordial with one another. They did show some flashes, like some foreshadowing, some scenes where there's a little bit some pranks going on, of course. But for me, I know that, say for some other fans, that they're more intrigued with some beefing between the coaches. I want to watch it just to see what these guys are like as coaches. I want to see these guys develop, because at the end of the day, we're saving our time with some tape study here, just watching these guys on the come up, how they improve their skill sets. And the reality is, a lot of people just don't want to watch The Ultimate Fighter. So by us sitting down and watching it, seeing what these guys are like, and being prepared for when some of these guys do make their debut in the Ultimate Fighter finale, I think it's a big edge to watch the show. So it's like a weird example, but I kind of treat it as like Monday Night Football. In a way, we're getting another day of like UFC-ish fights. And so, yeah, I mean, ideally you want the beef, but for me, it's not a huge deal sealer, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I'm with you in that. Like, the point of the show, it's not really necessarily the coaches' beef. It's about finding talent. It's about finding superstars. And they have unearthed many superstars over the years. Not as much lately, obviously. I think a lot of best talent's already sucked up by these organizations. But I do feel like a lot of fans do watch it for the beef part, and I feel like it was lacking. So I think going forward, it might not be the most entertaining season from like a coach's perspective. But the fight was pretty good, and there does seem to be some good talent, man. When me and Marcel broke down like the fighters last week, AJ, there was quite a few guys who were like undefeated, like young guys training in boot camps like Sanford MMA and like Team Alpha Male and stuff like that. So there's some good fighters on this card on this season, man, and I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, good start for sure with the first episode. And I'm with you. I mean, for me, it's like it's only an hour to my week. I don't have to watch it live. I can tape it. I can watch it, a little bit later that night or next morning. I try to obviously avoid the spoilers. I don't want to see. What's the point of watching if you already know what happened, right? I'm like that with anything, right? I'm like, if you know what happened, I'm not going to watch, but I'll watch the show. And I think you made a great point about getting like a slight edge because you're actually watching it. Unlike, I think most people probably didn't watch it, right? So when these guys eventually do go to the UFC, you'll have that extra edge, like you said, AJ, and you will save yourself a step from going back to do the tape study on these dudes because you've seen them fight already. So it's definitely worth watching, I think. But again, it's up to you guys. I mean, there's fights all the time now. There's always something to do. There's sports on every night: basketball, football, baseball, hockey, whatever it is. AJ, there's playoffs on every night. There's fights every night. So I can totally understand people picking and choosing. But for me, this is my life, man. MMA is my life. UFC is my life. So I'm gonna watch the show. I watched it with my fiance. She'd actually never seen the Ultimate Fighter. I've been dating for 3 years now, I guess. And the last time that the last season was on, we were just starting to date, the 28th season. So she'd never really heard of it. Like she'd seen the seasons on my shelf and stuff because I have all the old ones. She's like, "What is this?" I told her it's like a reality show, like Big Brother, but with UFC fighters. She's like, "What do you mean? Like this is kind of weird, right?" So she checked it out. She liked it and thought it was cool. But yeah, hopefully it's a good season. I don't think it's the best season though. Looking back, I think there were some good ones at the beginning of the show, AJ, like the BJ Penn, Jens Pulver season was a great one. The fifth one, Nate Diaz won that show. Or even like the first couple. I know, like look at the talent that won the show, eh? Like the first couple, like Forrest Griffin, Rashad. These guys are Hall of Famers, right? BJ Penn, Hall of Fame. Like, well, he's the coach, but still. Anyways, the point is, there's always good talent that comes on the show. Even like the last season we had, everyone said it sucked. You still got Macy Chiasson, who's a great fighter, and you still got Juan Espino, who's a decent fighter. So it's like, yeah, it wasn't the best season, the last one, but they've taken 3 years off. I feel like there is a little bit more talent that's been developed in that time, and hopefully we'll get these guys in the UFC soon. Anyways, we did want to talk about that, but the other thing is, me and Marcel obviously broke down the whole card, UFC Vegas 28. That'll take place Saturday. I know you're excited for the card, AJ, so am I. But there was one change to the card. This happened a couple days ago, so we're going to go through that change right now, guys. It's a change in the women's fight between Menon and Fiyero and Marina Moroz, who fell out of the fight due to, I believe, an injury, and she's been replaced by Tabitha Ricci on short notice. So told AJ to do the tape study for the fight. He did on Ricci. We obviously both already knew what Fiyero looked like because we talked about her. But let's look at this fight, AJ. I'm going to pull it up here. Just easier that way for everyone to look at it. Obviously, Ricci is new to the UFC here, coming over from LFA, guys, undefeated fighter. And here's the thing about her. Like, if you look at her betting lines, AJ, look at her betting lines, right? Like, she's been look at her last couple guys. Minus 3,000 her last fight, AJ, minus 2,000 the fight before that. So she's a highly touted prospect, but all of a sudden she's plus 350 now. So she went from minus 3,000 in her last fight to plus 350. That's kind of crazy, right? But at the same time, Ferrot, man, looked great in her debut in the UFC. She does have a significant height advantage. She does have a reach advantage, guys. She obviously had the full camp. Ricci coming in on short notice. Give me your thoughts on this, AJ. We'll go through both fighters. We'll start with Ricci, though. Give me your thoughts on this girl.
Yeah, I did a pretty deep dive on her tape last night. So she's like a judo practitioner. She's a black belt in judo. She's also a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. According to her Instagram, she's trained with Mackenzie Dern in the past. Didn't find any like recent pictures, but like say 2020 they did. On the feet, she's aggressive, which I like. She'll like attack you in a flurry. But Fro is way more technical than her, in my opinion. Just better offensively, more weapons, hits harder, more defensively sound, better footwork. So she's gonna, even though I like aggression, I think Fro is gonna have her number on the feet. And honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if she gets a finish. She said she's longer. She's got the reach advantage here. Tabitha, excuse me. Like you said, short notice, up a weight class here. She's fought 3 times relatively recently, but prior to that, there was just a huge span of you got a record right
7 years or something, right? 6 years, yeah.
Yeah, just not
gap, no fights. She was supposed to fight Viviane Araújo in 2016. That would have been a good experience for her, I think, right? And after she pulled out of that fight for some reason or got canceled. So she actually started fighting when she was 18 years old, and she had 2 fights when she was a teenager, which is cool. And then took off 6-7 years to develop her skills, obviously, and has obviously been working on her grappling. I watched her tape too, AJ. I had written about her because I do the LFA odds for Oddsbreaker, so I knew who she was, and I knew that the odds were high on her, and she had been like highly touted. But I didn't actually get the chance to watch those fights, so I went back and watched her last night. Very dominant with the grappling, no doubt about it. Very good takedown ability, very good ability to get on top, stay in a mounted position, stay in full mount, secure the legs of their opponent, be on top, be in a dominant position. But I just don't know if it's going to work in this fight. I think it could work against a lot of girls, especially like lower end fighters in the 150-pound division, AJ. But moving up a weight class, fighting a girl like Firo, who's so big and strong, who I think is better on the feet, and who I think has a pretty good grappling game herself. I think Firo probably neutralizes this girl, keeps on the feet, and kind of outstrikes her. I don't know if it's a finish or not, but I do like Firo in this fight. I got to be honest with you. I just wish the odds were better. The odds suck. It's minus 450, so it sucks. I got to be honest, AJ. I was probably going to bet on Firo against Moroz at minus 140, I think she was. I really like that bet there. Can't get it now, so it's minus 450. And I know that that's just under your limit, but is that something you look at, or is it just the short notice factor you're just going to pass kind of?
To be honest, the sportsbook that I use, DraftKings Sportsbook, hasn't released the props for this fight. And that would be, if I was going to bet this fight, where I would look. I guess I wouldn't be super comfortable laying this chalk price on Firo, even though she's not past that limit, because even though I agree with you, I think defensively she's looked very solid as a grappler. Like she could sprawl well. She gets her hips back. Like you said, she's very physical, and she technically fishes for underhooks, good head positioning, all stuff I like, but still don't really know what she's like when she's actually on her back. You mentioned this girl's definitely very strong in top position. So it creates an interesting unknown, I guess, in a way, just kind of like, I guess, a loose-ish example. We don't really know what Kamela Kirk's takedown defense is like. I couldn't find it on tape, at least. So in spots like that, I'm just okay with passing on the money line. It's enough of an unknown for me to be like, oh, like, why did I bet on this person where I literally saw no footage of what they're like on their back? But I'm with you. I think she rolls. I think she looks the part. She's legit. And at 125, I think she's like a top 5 talent, as bold as that sounds. So we'll see exactly how it pans out, but she looks sharp.
Yeah, it's a weak division, and this girl's obviously very talented. She's kind of like a natural. I mean, she's only been fighting a few years, and she's already in the UFC doing well. So, and what I like about her, man, she finished her fights. Like, she's not just winning decisions. She actually finishes her fights, and she finishes them late sometimes. Like, she's always going for the finish. So, yeah, I think it's just a tough fight for Ricci just because of the size. But I think this girl Ricci's quite good, AJ, and I think going forward, she's something to keep your eye on, because the grappling is so dominant. And I just talked about the top control. I mean, her submissions, even off her bottom, are okay. She had the armbar and stuff too, so she's good. Hey, Jose, I never understood how a fighter can get hurt during fight we could pull out. I don't get it either. I mean, it's stupid, right? Like, obviously it can happen. Anyone can get hurt, but you would hope that they'd be training a little bit smarter than, in Morose's case, than she was. Ends up pulling out the fight. And not only that, you lose your paycheck, right? So she's been training for the last 12 weeks, I guess, something like that, 10 weeks. Paid her coaches, paid her management. Now she doesn't get any money. So I don't think like she wants to pull out a fight, but obviously she was injured and had to pull out. We can't go through the whole card, AJ, because me and Marcel already did it. There'd be no point. But I do want to get your thoughts on maybe a couple fights. Maybe get your thoughts on the main event between Rozenstruik and Sakai. That'd be a good spot to look at, I think. Right now, basically pretty close to even, AJ, slightly leaning towards Jairzinho Rozenstruik, minus 125, Augusto Sakai, plus 105. I believe my breakdown's over. We're posting an odds breaker now, so you guys can go check that out. AJ, give me your thoughts on this fight, man, between these two heavyweights.
So I guess I'm kind of on an island here with being on Rozenstruik. I listen to people's podcasts when I have time during the week, but I make sure that I don't listen to them until after I'm done with my research, because I don't want it to like sway my judgment. And I think it's a close fight. I don't like how Rozenstruik just has this tendency of just like waiting. He's almost like a counter striker to a fault. Yep. But when I like actually watch them fight technically, I think he's more technical, better kickboxer. He obviously has more power. I think he's faster as well. And so Sakai, he throws more volume, but on the flip side of that is he, with more volume and striking exchanges, he will leave more opportunities for Rozenstruik to counter him. Gane was just a bad matchup for him in hindsight, just so fast and long, able to stick and move on the outside. But against a much slower, more hittable Sakai, I think Rozenstruik will have more openings to land that big shot. And maybe he doesn't have as much power as an Ngannou, but the guy's got bricks in his hands nonetheless. So I think Rozenstruik has more finishing upside. I think he's a bit sharper on the feet, but like if I was betting Rozenstruik, it would be one of those bets where it's just like he might be losing up until he hurts Sakai just because he doesn't want to throw. But I agree with it being relatively competitive. And I've overrated Sakai in the past, to be honest with you. I bet him against Arlovsky and Ivanov, and I thought I should have lost both those bets, to be honest with you. So, and one thing that stuck out to me there real quick, and then obviously you could talk, but they both were faster than Sakai, and that's a huge concern that I have, because I think Rozenstruik will be faster than him as well. So
yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, I remember having a bet on Sakai against Arlovsky. I thought he lost for sure. I couldn't believe he won that fight. Fight with Ivanov was super close. I thought he maybe edged it out, but it was close. And there was a takedown attempt that he grabbed the fence on, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And Cormier was yelling, "Take a point." If had the point been taken, it would be a different story. I just look at the last fight at Overeem, where he was doing pretty well, but gassed out, got tired, and doesn't seem to really eat damage that well, AJ. I don't know if you noticed that. Kind of like he wears it pretty bad, man. And guys, Overeem, I like Overeem. He's obviously a legend. He's not in the UFC anymore, and that guy just finished Sakai. Rozenstruik is the guy that knocked out Overeem. Obviously, was losing that fight up until knockout, but that just shows you, man, he just needs that one punch. I look at the Audrey Arlovsky fights. Both the guys fought them, right? What did Rozenstruik need? One left hook on the ear, and it was it. 30 seconds in, AJ. So I think he's of the two guys, he's probably the more likely to land that one punch KO. I do think Sakai has some knockout power. I will say this too. Me and Marcel both picked Rozenstruik. I haven't listened to anyone else's podcast. I do listen to some podcasts, but it's at the end of the week, and it's when I'm done all my work. It's just for entertainment purposes. I don't listen to other people's podcasts anymore to get like more knowledge, because there really isn't anyone more knowledgeable than me, in my opinion. And there's no point, right? So I listen to other people's podcasts for entertainment purposes, but not to like sway my pick or change my mind. I'm going to change my own mind if I have to. The only guys I trust are you and Marcel, really. So I just listen to you guys, what you have to say on this show. And that's about it. And Cole too, wherever he comes on. But for me, AJ, like, I made that mistake too many times where I got swayed by what other people were saying and didn't listen to myself. I have no idea what people are saying about Sakai. People do they like him here? Is that what the general consensus is from what you've heard?
I don't know, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how much they like him. I've just heard the vast majority of the people have picked him to win.
That's surprising. That is surprising. I'm not saying he can't win. It's a heavyweight fight. What's his path here? What's his path to win? Is it just to kind of hold Rozenstruik down and win a decision for 5 rounds? I think if the fight was 3 rounds, AJ, I would maybe lean a little towards Sakai, but not for 5, Like, I think that is a difference. I think the 5 rounds does help him, Rozenstruik. He's been 5 rounds a couple times, and he didn't look tired at all in those 5th rounds. Against Gane, bad matchup, just couldn't let his hands go. Against Overeem, pulled off the knockout with 4 seconds left. I mean, questionable stoppage, I agree, but still got the job done. So yeah, it's an interesting fight, but I'm kind of with you. I lean a little towards Rosenstrike. And actually, the guys in the chat here on Tuesday were saying that they thought Rosenstrike had some value. I honestly haven't laid any plays yet. I'll decide that tomorrow after the weigh-ins. But I mean, he's definitely on the short list, obviously, because the odds are so low. It's basically a pick-em fight. So just by math alone, he has to be in the short list. I hate betting on heavyweight fights in general, though. You know what I mean? Because it's just some more variance. But in this case, I feel like people are kind of. They're down on him for some reason right now, AJ, with Rosenstrike. They're really down on him right now. And for me, it's like, it wasn't that long ago where, he was a guy that people thought maybe could pull off the ups against Nagano, right? So to me, it's like people got a short memory. He lost to Gon, and Gon didn't get to finish in that fight, and everyone thought Gon's not that good now. Gon is great. He didn't finish that fight, but he's good. Let me get these comments. Hey, Doug, what's up, man? Do you think Rosenstrike came out to another title run, or did the Gon fight shut that down completely? I think at this point he's way behind Gon. He's behind Lewis. He's behind John Jones. Obviously behind Nagano. He's behind Stipe for a rematch. So he's behind like 5 or 6 guys right now, and Gon too, obviously. But I think that if he goes out there and knocks out Sakai, gets another win over someone in the top 10, I think he's right there. But I feel like maybe they're going to use him as a gatekeeper type. Like if he wins this fight, they might match him up with a guy like Tom Aspinall next or something. I could see them doing that with this guy too. But they could also do the same thing with Sakai. They might just, have those guys. They're basically looking for they want new top 10 talent in this division. AJ, if you look at I'm just going to pull it up here, the UFC heavyweight division.
Uh-oh. Looks like we lost Adam. We'll wait for him to join. I'll send him an invite. Let's see here.
Of course, I jumped out of the studio. I pressed the wrong button. Sorry.
No worries.
I'm a big Dumbo. Okay, what was I looking at? What did I just say? Oh, yeah, rankings.
Rankings, yeah.
Look at the rankings. So dumb. Press the wrong button. X. All right, where is it? Here we go. Look at the rankings for the heavyweight division, right? It's just weak as hell. Like, Shamil Abdur, when was the last time this guy fought? 2 years ago, AJ. Shamil. When was his last win? Like 3 years ago. Walt Harris, he's so one-dimensional. We can talk a little about him, too. But you know what I mean? Like, they're looking for these guys to step up. They wanted Sakai to – I don't think he's going to take the step. I don't think so. That would be really, really weird if he wins this fight and he's number 6 in the world. I just don't buy it at all. I don't buy Augusto Sakai as a top 10 talent. I'm not buying it. I think Rosenstrike is a top 10 talent. So I'm with you. Okay, Babel. Hey, Marcel's here. As long as Rosenstrike has 0 takedown defense, he'll never be a champion. I think he's right about that. Marcel made a good point the other day in the podcast, AJ. He said one thing he looks at with guys coming into the UFC, it's like you either have to have like basically perfect takedown defense or you're like incredible on the ground. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful in the UFC. And I pretty much agreed with him. I mean, it's true. Like, you have to stop takedowns. I think Rosenstrike's takedown defense is pretty good. I do think Sakai can probably get him down, especially in the first couple of rounds. He is a bigger guy. He has some extra weight on him. So I think that could happen. AJ, I'm kind of with you. I feel like maybe Sakai does win the first couple of rounds, but I thought he did against Overeem too. He won probably 1 or 2 of those rounds and just tired as the fight went on. I feel like the same thing happens here. So, yeah, it should be a good fight. Let me get your quick thoughts on the co-main event. You don't have to give me too much of this one, but Marcin Tybura against Walt Harris, that is the co-main event. I don't know if I like this as a co-main event personally. I don't even know if this fight needs the full 3 rounds personally. But just give me your quick thoughts on this fight, AJ, co-main event of the card.
Yeah, I think it's just a kind of a typical Walt Harris MO fight. Maybe he goes out there and knocks out Tybura quickly. We've seen Tybura knocked out more than once. I'm not sold that his durability is suddenly back now that he's won 4 in a row. It wasn't that long ago where he was knocked out quickly by Sakai, and he was knocked out by Abdurakhimov, who, like you mentioned, is just not a big power puncher for heavyweight standards. So Walt will be a real threat, I think, standing, assuming he really wants to go for it. And there's always that chance that maybe off 2 losses he's a little hesitant. But I agree with Tybura being a favorite. I just think that as long as he doesn't get knocked out quickly, he probably wins. I just think he's got better volume on the feet. I think he's the more varied striker. He could switch stances. He's got like more diverse set of like kicks. He can maybe work the body. We saw Volkov do that. I know Volkov's a little longer, a little rangier, but it's still there for Tybura nonetheless. And then, like you and Marcel pointed out, if you could control where the fight goes, you're the better wrestler. I tend to think you should be the favorite. And that's what we have here with Tybura. He's not an elite wrestler, but he's a serviceable one, right? I mean, we've seen Harris taken down the Overeem fight. He was taken down easily by Werdum. I know if you like look at UFCstats.com, it says like 72, but like the eye test says otherwise on Tilm. You know what I mean?
Yep, 100%. So, I agree with that. And you know what? Let me jump in there quickly. it's too easy just to look at the numbers, guys. You actually have to go back and watch the fights. And a lot of the stuff gets missed, too, by the numbers. They're good at their job, the stats guys, don't get me wrong. There are takedowns that are missed. There are takedowns defended that are missed. There are knockdowns missed, too. So you do have to watch the fight. You just can't look by those stats. And if you blindly look at Harris's takedown defense and say, yeah, it's really good, I actually don't think it's very good. Continue, though, please.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Good point. Yeah, and so if Tybura has that path where he could just take him down and maybe even finish him, he is a black belt, this Tybura. And I know Tybura is not the most dangerous guy for heavyweight standards, but if Harris is just completely spent on his back, like he was against Overeem,
man,
he could finish him.
That was disappointing because I remember I actually had Harris in that fight because I thought Overeem's chin at that point had been completely spent, and we know it has been, obviously, but drops him, AJ, drops him and gassed out so hard and then ends up on his back and just gets pounded out. I think the UFC has a soft spot for this guy because of what happened in his personal life where his daughter was murdered. I mean, let's be honest. That is the worst thing that could ever happen to anyone, right? So I feel like that's probably the only reason why he's still on the roster. I don't really think Walt Harris is a UFC caliber fighter. I'm not trying to be mean. Obviously, he does have some wins over guys in the top 10. I get that. But this was a couple years ago now. The difference between a 35-year-old fighter and a 37-year-old fighter is a big difference, guys. You got to remember that in MMA, 1 year time, for a normal person is 4 or 5 years in MMA standards because of all the damage and everything they do in the training, in the cage. And obviously, this guy's had to deal with a lot mentally too. So I wasn't impressed at all with the last two fights, AJ. Again, God bless this guy. I feel terrible for him. And I don't blame the UFC for keeping him around, but I think if he gets stopped here, they might let him go too. Because I was looking at his record, all time in the UFC, 6-8-1, no contest. That's a losing record in the UFC. That's the guy you want to bet against generally, I think, too, right? A guy with a losing record. So Martin obviously is on a nice roll here. I kind of lean towards him, but again, it is heavyweight, so he could get caught. I mean, this fight with Sakai is the one that worries me, AJ. I got to be honest. That one worries me because you just saw Sakai just blasted him, right? It's heavyweight. We can see more variance. So that's what I'm worried about here, just him getting blasted. But I actually think he is the better fighter, so I have to pick him because I think he's a better mixed martial artist, right? He actually has a ground game and actually has cardio, unlike Walt. Walt's cardio is just – he's got 5 minutes of cardio, AJ. I don't understand how you could be fighting the UFC in the top 10 and not have more than 5 minutes of gas in your tank. I just don't get it. Wouldn't that be – if you were a fighter, right, wouldn't your cardio be the thing you're working on the most, if anything? That'll win you fights. And Walt Harris has been in the UFC for years and just never improved that part of his game. He just relies on his punching power and his athleticism and his agility. Obviously, he's a very good athlete. I remember interviewing him years ago. Me and James Lynch interviewed him before he fought Jared Rosholt, his first fight in the UFC. So I've known this guy and I've been aware of him for a long time. I just think I feel like he's hit his peak. I think he peaked right here, AJ, where he knocked out Olenek and Spivak. And I don't think that guy's around anymore. I really don't. It's kind of like Woodley, right? Woodley, just a few years ago, absolutely destroyed Darren Till. Absolutely destroyed him. Darren Till, I think he landed either 1 or 0 strikes in that fight, significant strikes. It was an absolute domination. And then a few fights later, AJ, Woodley's the underdog against Jake Paul, a YouTuber. So it just shows you guys, in this sport, things change quick. And I think with Walt, after coming off these 2 losses, I just think he's at the end of the road, man. I really do. So be nice to see him win. It'd be a good story, but I'm not seeing AJ. Anyways, like I said, me and Marcel talked about the other fights. I do want to get your dog of the week, though, because I've been doing that with you. I feel like you've been pretty good with them. I can't remember what your last one was. It was a few weeks ago. Do you remember what it was, your last dog of the week?
I don't know.
Let me double check. Because I think that it was the Font Garbrandt card, and I think you picked Jared Vanderaa. That was your dog of the week. Jared Vanderaa was your guy, I think, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't it? I can't remember.
I think so.
It might have been. Yeah, which is hilarious. By the way, mine sucked. It was Claudio Silva. What a shit pick. That was so bad. I couldn't believe how that fight played out. That was a really bad one. Like I said, guys, I've had some good picks, and that was not a good one. But overall, AJ, I mean, I do pretty good with my dogs. I know you do too. You're a pretty good dog hitter. My rate on dogs is pretty good. Marcus, what's up, man? Have the TV ratings going for tough? I want to hear your thoughts, Marcus. As much as I like MMA, I'm not motivated to watch it. If the show had coaches some charisma and real beef like Francis, Derek, I'd watch. Okay, so Marcus, we actually did talk about a little bit at the beginning of the show, but I do. We'll get into it quickly, AJ, and then I want to get your dog of the week for this card. But I just want to get Marcus's comment before I forget. Marcus, I haven't seen the TV ratings or anything like that. I'd imagine they weren't too great, quite frankly. I did watch it. AJ watched it. I enjoyed the fight. I think there's some good talent in the show. But I'm 100% with you, man. There, as far as the coaches, there was no beef at all, bro. There was nothing, Marcus. You can watch it yourself. There was nothing. They didn't even show the coaches really. Like they showed them doing the training, but there was never like them bickering back and forth like Rashad and Rampage or anything like that, right? So can you just respond to that comment quickly? Like obviously we talked about it before, but anything you want to say?
I mean, every fan has different standards. For me, it's not a huge deal sealer. It'll be great. It'll rise ratings. But I mean, on the flip side, we were only one episode in. I mean, what's to say that they don't develop beef as things kind of go on? I remember when they were picking teams, Ortega and his coach asked everybody before they were drafted whose team they want to join, and Ortega kind of casually said, you'd be surprised at how many people said they didn't want to be on Volk's team. And so it could be a little bit of a spark, a little bit of something to where a fire arises to where perhaps there is some beef. They did show a snake as like a foreshadowing somebody pulling a prank on somebody. So you never know.
I mean, there could be some entertainment for sure. Dog of the week, I nominate my neighbor's Rottweiler. That's funny. Got an odd feeling Ortega's not going to come off nice on tough after the show, although he got the best team. Man, so I was talking to I don't really need to say names, but I was talking to a good friend of mine, and he did an interview with Ortega, and and I wrote about it actually at BJ Penn. You can read the interview if you want. I just wrote it up. It's not like I interviewed him myself or anything, but they weren't happy that the comments were negative about the show, and he was telling me, he goes like, they don't want me interviewing Ortega, and I'm like, that's a joke, dude. They haven't said anything to me. I don't really care either. Honestly, I don't care. It doesn't affect my job or anything. But for a guy who's interviewing people, obviously it would. It's just stupid, right? Like this guy is doing all the damage control he can. I guess I don't understand that at all. I mean, maybe he is going to come off bad. I think so far nothing's really changed. My thoughts on both guys, but you did see Colby Covington said those comments, and you saw what both these guys ran to their defense right away. AJ, what are you talking shit for, Colby? What's your problem? Like these guys are the toughest guys in the world, but it feels like they're so emotional at times, like for the dumbest things. AJ, it's like, okay, the guy said something bad about tough. Who cares? And now another guy's internet access or interview access is being kind of like up in the air because of that. That's just stupid. So I'm imagining they'd be pissed at me because I wrote about it, but I don't really care. There's tons of stuff I wrote about. Listen, the news is not always nice. I say that all the time. The news is not always nice. It's not always going to be good news, and unfortunately, my job is to write about it. So let me get this comment. Ask 11 Americans if they prefer to train American or Australian. I think Americans will pick the American. Yeah, that's true. I think Volk is the better MMA fighter and the better overall fighter, I think, but Ortega's amazing on the ground, and I can't blame these guys if they want to learn under him, obviously. His submissions are second and none pretty much in that division. So they're both good coaches, I think. But like I said, the beef, I'm with Marcus. It's not there. And I think Marcus is right. I think, Colby and I think Masvidal or Colby and Usman would have been good, or Masvidal, Usman, those would have been good. I think Usman actually has a good personality, be good for the show. I think Francis and Lewis would have been good. That would have been awesome. Francis and Lewis. Why didn't they just do that? That would have been great. Or even Francis and Jones, So I feel like there was better choices, AJ, but like from a coaching, like actually the coaching part of it, and as someone who used to train MMA, that matters. Having a good coach actually really does help. So I think it's a good thing, but I agree from an entertainment point of view, not the best. You guys saw Paul Herrera's one of the coaches on Ortega's side did. Dude was the bad side of one of the worst KOs in UFC history. The Crucible Hell looks from Gary Goodridge. Yeah, Gary Goodridge is Canadian, actually. He's actually from really close to me, Babel fan, Marcel. Gary Goodridge, a legend of sport. That is, you know the knockout he's talking about, right? From UFC. You don't know it? Okay, I'm going to pull it up.
Let's do it.
I mean, this is a classic. And then we'll go back to the card. Sorry, guys. We got a little distracted there, all these comments. It's okay, though. You never seen that, eh?
No, I have not.
I'm sure I spelled it wrong, but it doesn't matter. I'm sure you've seen this, AJ. You've never seen this finish.
No, I don't think so. Let's see.
I can't remember. It's like UFC 4 or 5. I'll double check. Watch this. You've seen this. It's one of the best ever.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, man. It's one of the nastiest knockouts of all time. I mean, it's one of the best ever.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it is. And it is awesome, Marcel. I didn't realize it was the same guy, Marcel. I saw his name, and I'm like, Phil Herrera. Okay, cool. I didn't even realize. Sorry, Paul. Sorry, not Phil. That's crazy, man. Wow, that's crazy. Anyways, AJ, now you've seen the knock. Pretty good, eh?
Yeah, to say the least.
All right, so give me your dog of the week for this card. Give me one dog if you can.
Let me just double check to make sure.
Yeah, of course. Do you want me to give one while you're looking, or?
Well, I was just double checking to make sure he's still a dog. He's a
Yeah,
pick him on some
I feel like
sites.
I feel like we might be in the same guy, but let me hear your thoughts. Who is it?
Well, I'll give out two, I guess. So one, I like Ponzinibbio. I think as long as he's not quote unquote done, he could win this fight. I like Baeza, but I think this is a little too much too soon. But stylistically, it's not a bad fight for Ponzinibbio, but the bacterial infection in the chin makes me nervous. And then one more,
Yep.
I think Zalal. I know that might be a bit bold because of the reach discrepancy, but I'm not sold on Woodson as a defensive grappler. Like he could get up reasonably well, but just like seeing how Arosa just grabbed his neck and just threw him down and choked him with the darce, like I don't know. Zalal's at least a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. He's shown some submission grappling from the front headlock. So he's a scrappy guy. It's crazy like how people were high on him and now he's coming off 2 losses and now it's just like the total opposite. So those are 2 guys. There's a couple others, but yeah. How about you though?
I'm just counting right now how many dogs I'm going to pick on this card because there was a couple guys the other day that I was like on the fence about. I had said that in the podcast. I was like, man, I'm on the fence about a few guys, but there was some more information I got that swayed me a little bit towards maybe one of them especially. So right now I'm looking at 5 dogs on this card. There's 14 fights, so I don't think that's unreasonable, to be honest with you. I think that's probably what's going to happen, Age. You'll probably see 5 or 6 upsets on this card, if I had to guess. There are a lot of close fights. There's a lot of variance in this card, I believe. I think there's a lot of like mid-tier fighters, lower-level guys. Also, there's like 3 or 4 heavyweight fights, which has more variance, right? So I do think you'll see a lot of upsets on this card, guys. But one dog that I liked, AJ, and I'm with you on this one, so it'll be a consensus dog, Youssef Zalal. I do like him as well. I gave him out as a pick on the show the other day, and I felt decently confident about it. And nothing's changed, really. I'm with you. I have a lot of concerns about Sean Woodson's defensive grappling. I don't believe he'll be able to keep this fight standing for the entirety of it. Maybe the first round he can keep it standing. I think as the fight goes on, he does wear down a little bit. He does tire a little bit. I think we saw that against Carrot McKinney. He was getting controlled in the ground in that fight. I had to watch that fight back. Dude, he landed a fluke flying knee. He was getting dominated in that fight. You know what I mean, AJ? Like, I'm not sold on this guy. He obviously has that athleticism, got that KO power. He actually reminds me, I said the same thing the other day. He reminds me of Elon Cruz, another guy huge for this division, really tall, but durability is a question mark. And again, another guy, AJ, he had a flying knee knockout or a jumping knee knockout in the show, and now he's not even in the UFC anymore. I think if you lose to Julian Erosa, it kind of shows you're not really UFC caliber, man. I think that's a guy that's like right at the bottom of the UFC featherweight division or lightweight division. So I can't remember what division is. 145, excuse me, guys. Featherweight division, obviously. And I think he's the guy at the bottom of the division. So to me, it's like, man, you lose to that as a minus 600 favorite. I'm not backing this guy. You know what I mean? So Zalal, and I was talking about this the other day, all of a sudden, Asia, everyone's down on him, right? Because he loses back-to-back fights. Topuria is way better than any of us thought at the time. I mean, I wasn't on Topuria. I didn't realize how good he was. Now I know. I think Topuria is a future top 10 guy. I really do. And the Sungwoo Choi guys, honestly, that was a tough matchup. A guy with good takedown defense and pretty good striking. So I think it's just a different fight. I'm kind of with you on this one with Zalal. So that's one that I do like. And there's a couple other dogs, but I still haven't decided on. But there's a few guys like, I was saying this the other day, like a guy like Francisco Trinaldo, I think, is really being kind of undersold in this fight here. Plus 205, AJ. I mean, the guy's won 3 straight fights. He's got power. He's beaten better technical strikers like John McDessie. But the size obviously is going to be the difference, right? He's moving up a weight class. And I think another guy is 42 years old. It's hard to back him. I just think those odds are kind of nuts. I don't know what your thoughts on that one are. Quickly, we'll move on to some other stuff. But any thoughts on that one quickly?
I'm not that high on Trinaldo right now. I get that he's on a winning streak, but he didn't. After watching the Herbert fight, I didn't think he looked good. Like he got hurt at range in the second round. He got tired. He got his.
Let me just say this: I had a bet on Herbert, dude. And I'm like, oh man, this was such an easy bet. I should have put more money on him. Bang! And that could happen in MMA, right? Like, that was crazy. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. And I just you mentioned the move up in weight, and I just if he gets this fight to the ground, he's got a big advantage. But
that's what I was saying too. He's the better overall MMA fighter, I would say, right? But the striking, you would have to give it to Salikov with the technique, right?
Oh yeah, and just like Salikov, I don't think he's a bad defensive wrestler. Like even when everybody brings up the Garcia fight, and that's fair. But Garcia actually didn't take him down with ease. Like he actually had to really muscle him down. And Garcia, a guy no longer with the UFC, but he's a physical specimen for 170-pound standards. And Trinaldo is too, but again, moving up from 155, he's a little smaller. And I just think Trinaldo's going to try and close range, and then he's just going to run into counters of Salikov. And I think Salikov, even though Trinaldo hasn't been knocked out, he has been hurt. He got hurt by Vic. He got hurt by Lee. You brought up the Herbert fight. So he could win. He's the ageless wonder, as you said, but I just think Salikov is the rightful favorite, to be honest.
No, for sure. I'm just saying, like, I thought so too. And then, watching his fights back, I just think the guy is pretty underrated, because, AJ, me, I always bet against the guys who are 40 plus, right? But this dude keeps winning. He's actually the one guy bucking the trend, right? Like, he doesn't seem to be in a decline. He actually seems to kind of be, if not anything, getting better, which is crazy to me because he's so old now, right? He's 42. But at the same time, it's hard to back a guy at that age. I just think the odds are a little bit wide in Salikov's favor in this fight. But he does have the striking advantage. I mean, watching his fights back, the guy's got some good technique, man. Although that last fight was super close, AJ, with Dulesky Dos Santos. I have no idea who really should have won that fight. I was like, who's going to win this? Anyways, like I said, go check out Tuesday's podcast, guys, with myself and Marcel Dorf. We broke down the entire card. And if you missed what me and AJ did today, we talked about the other fight with Firo and Ricci that was added. Tomorrow with Elite Fantasy and Elite Betting at 4 p.m. Eastern, myself and Duke, my co-host there, we'll go on the whole card from a DFS point of view. And I'll give out my bets tomorrow. But I got to finalize them, obviously. I got to watch the weigh-ins. I always wait till the weigh-ins, AJ. Let's talk a little bit about some news and stuff, and then some fight announcements, and we'll get out of here. I don't know if you saw, but Dana White suggested that Colby Covington will be next in line for the title shot at 170. Now, he's saying this now, right? But here's the thing, AJ. I really think next week, because we have Leon Edwards fighting Nate Diaz, the winner of that fight, especially if it's impressive, I think especially if Nate pulls off the upset and somehow finishes Leon, Dana White saying this now, I think a week from now, this could be a different talk from Dana White. What do you think, AJ?
Yeah, the further we get away from today, it could the opinion could easily change. I think, and the other thing to consider, and it's kind of dawned on me more so recently, is I remember Usman saying going into the second Masvidal fight, he's only got a couple fights left in him. So it would make sense. I think that Colby should get the next title shot, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if the UFC just did an interim belt for whatever reason, just to solidify who gets next shot, Leon versus Colby. Because I mean, we all have our own opinions, but I think Leon just totally smokes Nate Diaz, to be honest with you. But and I love Nate, but that's just my
I think we talked about that one a few weeks ago. I can't remember. I think we did, though, a little bit in this podcast. Anyways.
Yeah. So, but you have options for Usman, which I think is important. You got a couple guys floating in there. So I think it's a win-win either way.
I was at the last fight between those two guys in Vegas. That was an amazing fight. It was like a crazy fight. It was a long night too. I think there was like 15 fights in the card, and there was 3 title fights. They all went the full 25 minutes, right? Well, this one went 24 minutes, but it was a long night, man. First time in Vegas, first card I ever saw there. It was cool. So it was awesome. Great fight. I'd love to see it again. I just think the next week, if Nate Diaz goes out there and pulls off the upset somehow, I think he'll be next in line for 100%. That's what I think, because I just think the money, the almighty dollar matters more than who deserves it, I think, in the UFC. Marcus Williams, good show. Marcus, we love you, man. Appreciate it. If you have any more questions, Marcus, throw them in. You guys throw them in there. We got 15 minutes left, so we'll take some more questions. Dana White, I don't know if you saw this, AJ. This was kind of a weird, kind of like surprising story. I shouldn't say weird, kind of like coming out of nowhere. But some Instagram commenter asked Dana White about fighters getting benefits, and Dana White said that he said something's coming soon. So this is great news, obviously. They haven't did anything for the fighters from that kind of point of view since they introduced insurance for guys that got injured during fights or in training 10 years ago, 2011. So this would be a big step forward for the sport if it happens. Mm-hmm. I'm still very skeptical. What about you? Any initial thoughts?
I mean, that's great. I mean, I think a lot of people will doubt Dana, but I think, because we all thought he was crazy about this Fight Island thing, and then it materialized. So I say give Dana a chance. I mean, let's see what happens. I mean, I think that Dana is one of these guys that, I mean, we just talked about the whole fight announcement thing about him changing his mind, but in terms of actually I think Dana is more consistent with like execution along the lines of just purely like business, like operation standpoint, not necessarily so much with the matchups that we all talk about, but more so from just like, hey, this event's going to happen here. We're making it happen. We're going to have a live crowd on this date, this time. We're making it happen. So I do trust Dana when it comes to stuff like this. I would encourage everybody to give him a chance here. I mean, what's the risk of waiting here? And Dana loves to prove doubters wrong. So all the more reason to believe in the guy even more.
I think it'd be a great thing, man. I think it'd be amazing. I mean, they should have obviously insurance. Everyone knows that. The fighters should be paid more money. The fighters should get benefits. We all know that. I'm very skeptical because I still feel like until we get like a union or some sort of representation in a collective bargaining agreement, we're not going to get these kind of things. That's what I think. Because you look at other sports, there's some sort of collective bargaining for these kind of things. So that's what I think is going to happen. But we'll see, guys. I mean, it's not a bad sign that he said this. Okay. We're going to get to a couple more fight announcements that came up today, and then I want to talk about Paul and Mayweather. And again, any questions? We got 15 minutes left. Okay, we're going to go through this fight here, AJ. 2 fights got announced today. Marcel announced one, and the other one was announced by Junkie. And here we go. We're going to pull them up here. And there's some good ones, AJ. Give me your quick thoughts on these fights. Don't break them down by any means. But Max Griffin and Carlos Condit. You got Max Payne Griffin and Natural Born Killer, man. I love this fight. What do you think? UFC 264, by the way. Conor and Poirier. What do you think?
I like it. It was select. I'll just say I'm not going to break down the fight, but I'll just say
don't. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet Griffin in his last fight, and like my breakdown was all like how he was going to mix in takedowns and like out volume him on the feet, and then he just knocks him out in the first round, and I'm like, okay, all right, that happens. But anyway, I think it's a good opportunity for both guys.
No, I know. I was surprised he knocked out Song. Like it was so quick the last fight, but yeah, it's a fair fight. I think it's a fair fight. Max's record's only 5-6 UFC. Yeah, he's been good lately, but overall not that great. Carlos Condit 9-9, but we all know he's obviously an amazing striker. I hope it stays standing, but obviously if Max is smart, he'll just take the fight to the ground. Condit has really weak takedown defense. Talk about it when it happens. Montel Jackson and Dan Batrickle. I think Marcel broke this fight himself. Man, I love this fight too. I mean, Batrickle has a ton of knockout power. I know you're super high on Montel Jackson coming off that great win over Jesse Strader, knocked him out quick. Good hands, good wrestling, good submissions. Batrickle, a ton of knockout power. I mean, it's just another fair fight. UFC is known for making fair fights. This looks like a fair fight to me. What do you think?
Yeah, I love it. Bantamweight, both guys are riding some momentum. Yeah, I think it's a great booking. Yeah,
me too. Yeah, and then I think there was one other one. Oh yeah, that fight, and then there was this one. The guy I just mentioned, Jesse Strader, fighting Manny Martinez. You remember this guy Martinez? He fought on Contender Series. I don't know if you remember him. He fought. What's the guy's name? He lost Draco Rodriguez, and he lost. And then Draco obviously just missed weight and then lost to his fight. So I'm not sure what to take away from that. And then Strader obviously got destroyed in his last fight by Jackson. So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, I thought Strader on tape looked amazing, but he didn't look too good in that last fight. And then this is the last one. This guy's actually going to fight at 205, I guess, against Jacoby. I was kind of hoping they were just going to do the rematch between Jacoby and Cutelaba because it was a draw. But I guess this fight's fine. I mean, this looks like the same guy almost, just with tattoos. What do you think? Another big, strong dude.
I mean, I'm just wondering how this guy's going to make 205. I mean, he literally looks like he could compete in a bodybuilding competition. Like, he reminds me of like that guy. He never fought in the UFC, but he was supposed to fight Devin Clark, Ivan Shiratov. Yeah, like he was just so massive. I'm like, how's this guy going to make the weight? So this is definitely a fight. If you're going to watch weigh-ins, I know this is way in advance. I'm definitely watching weigh-ins for this one to see what this guy looks like.
Yeah, no, I think so too. He was supposed to fight Ben Rothwell at like a recent card, and the fight got scrapped because I don't know what happened. But anyways, all right, that's it for the fights. Now, the one other thing I want to bring up, we're going to talk about this for a few minutes here. There's a big fight this weekend, guys, and I know not all you guys are fans of it, but not that stuff. This is the other website right for Spectation Sports. So we do the regional stuff, but we also do some boxing. So I just wanted to plug this. Me and James did a preview video, which was awesome. It's on their YouTube. Me and James Lynch. You can check it out. We talked all about the rules and stuff like that. So I want to talk about this fight with AJ, and I'm also going to have a written breakdown. It should have been up today, but there was something wrong with the back end or something. It should be up later. There's a full preview though, guys. So definitely check that out. Written preview. I'm looking forward to the fight, even though I think it's a complete wash for Floyd. I'm just watching it. Marcel's leaving. Peace, Marcel. I'm watching it because, I mean, it's going to be, I think, somewhat entertaining. I think Floyd knocks him out. I'm pretty sure. I mean, I don't know if you actually did the tape during Logan Paul, but he keeps his hands at his waist, AJ. He doesn't keep his hands high enough at all. He's fighting a 15-0 boxer. He's owing AJ. I mean, are you going to watch?
Yeah, I'll watch. I hope this probably won't happen, but one can hope that enough people bet Paul so we get a playable line on Floyd like we did when it was Conor against Floyd.
It was like minus 200, right? Wasn't it something like really minus 250 or something? It was really low.
It was really low for a guy that's never, And I think Mayweather probably goes out there and does his thing. It's just, how Paul wins. He's not the better boxer, but like he wins if Floyd got old since the last time we saw him, which again, it's possible. He's 43, but the better boxer is. He's the rightful favorite. But kudos to Paul. He's getting these big fights. Him and his brother are getting these massive fights where win, lose, or draw, you're making a ton of money.
Fighting Floyd Mayweather, man. He's going to probably make, like 7-8 figures? Like, he's going to do maybe 9 figures? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, he's going to make a lot of money. I know Floyd will probably make 9 figures. Call him money for a reason. They call him money for a reason because he's a great bet, too. I mean, he's been a great bet over the years. He's 50-0. Like, if you've been betting on Floyd, and a lot of the fights he had, the lines weren't that crazy either, Especially early on. That the Pacquiao fight, the line wasn't crazy either, that he dominated that fight. The guy's just an absolute stud. He's minus 1,200 for this fight, though. That's the problem. But the prop on him winning by TKO is minus 200. And I think he does probably get the finish. It's an 8-round fight, and they just went to 10-ounce gloves with no headgear. So I think someone probably gets finished, and I think it's going to be Paul. I mean, but if Floyd just danced around and put on, like, if he almost carried him to, like, put on a show for the fans, you know what I mean? Almost let Logan hit him a little bit. Like, remember the Conor fight? He kind of let Conor tag him a little bit in the first couple of rounds, played with him, gave Conor some confidence, and then you saw what happened after that. And not only that, his conditioning is second. Even at his age, I still think his conditioning is going to be like second to none. And he has an iron chin too. Like, he's just. Is there any flaw in the guy's game at all? Nothing, right? And then the only thing is there's a weight discrepancy of 50 pounds. So we have to keep that in mind. It's like 150 to 200 basically. Logan Paul is 6 inches taller. He's Floyd's 5'8", Logan's 6'2", and Logan has a 4-inch reach advantage. Floyd has a 72-inch reach for a 5'8" fighter, so he's always enjoyed a reach advantage for his weight classes, AJ. Not in this fight. But I just think, and also obviously Floyd is 15 years older, I think. So, those are things that if the fight was close, those are things that would make me lean towards the other fighter. You know what I mean? If the fight was like an even money fight, but in a fight like this, guys, like there's such a, and I was talking with James in that preview video, there's such a wide skill gap here. Like the gap in skill is just so wide that the weight doesn't matter and the reach doesn't matter. I think the only way that Floyd would lose if this is like a fixed fight, like if the fix is in and he loses for some reason. But I thought the same thing about his fight with Tenshin Natsukawa in Japan, and he knocked him out. And that guy's incredible, and he knocked him out. So I think he smokes this dude, and I think. Like, you're going to see the difference between fighting legitimate boxers and fighting YouTuber, And I give a lot of these Paul guys a lot of respect, though, man. I think a lot of fans, and especially MMA fans, AJ, are kind of hating on these guys right now. They're like, these guys stink and they're not good for the sport. But I think they're good for the sport. I see the numbers. People want to read about them. People want to talk about them. And people, even though they say they hate them, they still watch their fights, AJ. A guy like George St. Pierre recently came out and he said he's a fan of these guys. He's like, they're doing good for the sport. They're making money for the fighters. That's a good thing. Ultimately, isn't that what it comes down to? Is prize fighting, right? So what's your thoughts on these guys as like competitors, as athletes?
It doesn't bother me at all. I think it just bothers a lot of people because a lot of people in the community, and not just MMA, but just in general, just any social media, want to sort of adapt this mindset that like, oh, this is what you do, stick to that. You can't do anything else. And it's just not fair. We could be well-rounded as human beings. And I'm not saying to go out there and strap on gloves and fight somebody, but I'm just saying if you want to do something else, we have multiple passions as people, and we have every right to go out there and exercise them. So if you want to go out there and box like Jake Paul and Logan Paul are doing, that's their right. They could go out there and do it, and more power to them. God bless them. They're making more money. They're getting more exposure, and that's what they want to do. So for people to hate on them, it just doesn't make any sense to me. So it's just kind of like why I felt like I got a good price. I didn't take Jake Paul's money line, but I took the actually under 5.5 rounds when he fought Askren because I thought the line was so narrow because people were hating on Paul, saying, how could this guy that, how could he beat Ben Askren, who's so much more experienced in combat sports? But like me and you talked about, you got to remove that bias. You got to actually look at what these guys are like with boxing gloves on and analyze the fight that way. You can't go, oh, YouTube star, oh, former wrestler. It's where they're at right now. And so people in circumstances like these just get way too emotional. And it's just, to put it bluntly, it's just their downfall. Like you could just get, if you're betting and you're getting too emotional with it, you could just go down a rabbit hole. And I've been there in the past as well.
So have I. That's a mistake I made. you learn from it, right? Like you can't be emotional. You gotta, and you can't really bet with your heart. You gotta bet with your mind, right, AJ?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And yeah, but you the first step to defeating that is just recognizing that the bias is there, and then you just take a step back, and then you actually just don't get too caught up in I don't like this guy. You just analyze them as fighters. You don't have to analyze them as people. Most people don't share the same commonalities where we have different beliefs, different backgrounds, and so by default you're going to have some disagreement. So I don't have an issue with them whatsoever. So more power to them. I think it's just going to draw a lot of attention, and rightfully so.
And betting odds for the fight are out right now. I just want to get your quick thoughts on those. -135 for Jake Paul, +115 for Woodley. Any initial thoughts? I mean, I know you're probably going to study this fight, and I think you should, and I will too, because I think there is a betting opportunity in this fight because the line's close. There'll be a lot of people betting on this fight. You're going to see a lot of strong opinions, I think, either way too, by the way, for this one. Any initial thoughts on the line, though?
Ooh, I think it depends on how Woodley kind of just shows up. Just depends where he's at. It's just on paper, it's a much tougher fight for Paul than the Askren fight was. But at the same time, like you mentioned earlier in this very podcast, Woodley's near the end of his combat sports run as well. So that's going to be another fight where people are going to get way too emotional. I could already see it coming, and like you said, you just got to sit back, watch the film, take the emotions out of it, and assess the fight that way. But as far as an entertainment perspective, yeah, I'll watch it. I mean, people are going to really tune in to Jake Paul now because he's picking the right fights. He's picking these guys that he can make a name off of it, but at the same time, he's catching them at the right time in their respective careers because he's younger, more athletic, taking less damage. And yeah, I think it's smart, actually very smart and strategic of both Paul brothers to do this. Win, lose, or draw, you're making a lot of money.
No, I agree. And I think they are good athletes. I think people underrate them as athletes because they look at them as like these TV star or YouTube stars, I should say, or Disney star in Jake's case. I got to be honest. I never saw the only thing I ever saw with Logan Paul was that video where he went in like that forest and there was someone like hanging in a forest in Japan or something. Like he got in a lot of crap for it because he wasn't supposed to do that. It was like disrespectful. That's where I found out about him because I'm not really like I watch YouTube, but I'm watching like old fights or like game shows and stuff. You know what I mean? Or funny clips. I'm not watching like that kind of stuff, AJ. I'm not saying anything wrong with that. By the way, if you're into that, but I didn't even know who they were before they got in these boxing matches. I got to be honest with you. I didn't even know who they were. But now I know who they are, and I write about them all the time now. And I think, at first I didn't really want to do it, but I've kind of like grown to like these guys. And I'm telling you, man, as someone who writes about the sport and gets paid, when the more people have eyes on it, these guys, people read their stuff, So, anyways, it's interesting. I think that'd be it, AJ, for the podcast today. Is there any other questions? I don't think so. Anything else you want to mention, man? We got 2 minutes left. Was there anything else that we forgot to talk about, or you want to mention anything grinding your gears?
Nothing too much. I'm just happy that we got fights. We got Bellator next week, so looking forward to talking about that. Bellator and UFC. So
and PFL too. We have PFL too.
Awesome. Yeah. So like we talked about, people are a little bummed about the break, but hey, a break was good here, I think. So right back on the horse, 4 UFC weeks in a row with an event. Bellator mixed in as well. PFL, like you said. So yeah, I think it's a good time to be a fight fan as always.
Plug your stuff, man. Let's get out of here.
All right, so Twitter at AJ_SCHULLO. I have bets placed for this upcoming UFC event and UFC 263. If you'd like to find out what they are, you can subscribe to the Betting Hub at dailyfanmma.com as well as betmma.tips/AnthonyS364. You could also find my third-party tracked verified record there as well. As always, Adam, it was good talking with you. Best of luck to everybody. And yeah, let's do this, man.
Yeah, man, for sure. Thanks, AJ, again for joining me, man. And thanks to all the listeners, guys. Always trying to grow it. I mean, it's slowly growing. I can see the numbers growing. Like, obviously, we're still like a smaller show, but I think we have good discussion here every week. We're always good to each other here, too. So everyone's respectful. I think it's definitely a good podcast. And I hope you guys enjoy it. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Adam Martin, as you know. I don't know about you. I applied to be verified. I'm expecting to get rejected, but I threw a shot out there. I mean, why not, right? I don't know if you saw that, AJ. Like, I think a lot of us are taking a shot at it. Most people are getting rejected, but maybe we'll see me with a little blue check mark. I doubt it. I'm like 99% sure they're going to say no, but there's always that 1% chance, right? You never know. So we'll see. Anyways, you guys can follow me there on Twitter. You guys can follow me, the podcast on YouTube. It's on the MMAoddsbreaker.com YouTube. It's on our website, obviously. Anchor, SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes. All the links are there, guys, in the description. So definitely subscribe in there. Always post it. Try to get up the next day when I can. Also, we're on my bjpen.com, miaminews.com for the news. Fantasy Fanatics got some cool stuff coming up with them coming up soon. Spectation Sports got the boxing preview, and then Elite Fantasy, Elite Betting. I'll have my bets up tomorrow, my DFS breakdown. Got to work on that. 14 fights, AJ, so I got quite a bit of writing to do still. But yeah,